On a gray and rainy morning in New York City, the streets were crowded with hurried footsteps, umbrellas colliding as people rushed to get out of the storm. Emily, a young woman in her mid-20s, carried a stack of papers tucked under her arm, trying to shield them from the water while juggling her bag and her umbrella. She was late, her thoughts running faster than her steps, and her only plan was to make a quick stop at her favorite little coffee shop before heading to the office. As she pushed open the heavy glass door, the warmth of the cafe hit her instantly, fogging her glasses and making her pause for just a second. In that exact moment, as she fumbled to close her umbrella, she bumped into someone. Her papers almost scattered, but a strong hand reached out just in time to steady her. Standing in front of her was Jack, a tall firefighter in uniform, his presence solid yet gentle. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the noise of the busy cafe seemed to fade away. Emily muttered an apology, embarrassed, while Jack gave her a reassuring smile, his voice calm and kind as he told her not to worry. It was an ordinary accident, the kind of thing that happens every day in a city as big as New York. Yet something about it felt different, almost as if it wasn't an accident at all. As Emily stepped aside to order her coffee, she couldn't help but glance back at him. Jack was at the counter too, ordering his usual, unaware that this simple, rainy morning encounter had just set the stage for something that would soon change both their lives in ways they never could have imagined. The days that followed carried with them a strange familiarity, as if fate was weaving invisible threads between two people who had barely met. Emily began to notice that each morning, almost without fail, Jack was there at the same coffee shop. At first, it felt like coincidence, a passing overlap of routines in a busy city. But slowly, those moments started to mean more. What began with polite smiles and nods soon grew into casual greetings, and then into conversations that stretched far beyond the time it took to sip a cup of coffee. Emily would often sit with her notebook open, the blank pages staring back at her, while Jack would ask about her writing. She told him about her dream of becoming a published author, about the rejections that stung but never fully defeated her spirit. Jack listened with a quiet attentiveness that made her feel seen in a way she rarely did. In return, he shared glimpses of his own world, stories from the firehouse, the weight of responsibility he carried, and the sense of purpose that kept him grounded even in the most dangerous moments. Their talks were never forced, flowing naturally as if they had been speaking to each other for years. The coffee shop, once just a stop on the way to work, transformed into something more, a space where two different lives began to intertwine. Emily felt her mornings shift from rushed necessity to quiet anticipation, knowing Jack might be there, waiting with his warm smile and easy laugh. The connection grew deeper with every encounter, and what once seemed like chance began to feel like the unfolding of something far more deliberate, something neither of them could ignore. As the weeks turned into months, the conversations between Emily and Jack became the anchor of their mornings. What had started as light exchanges about books and coffee orders deepened into something far more meaningful. Emily, who often kept her thoughts guarded, found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She spoke about the loneliness of pursuing her dream, the fear of failure, and the way New York could sometimes feel like both the greatest stage and the coldest cage. Jack never interrupted, never tried to fix her worries. He simply listened with a patience that felt rare in a city that moved too quickly for most to care. In turn, Jack shared pieces of himself that few outside the firehouse ever saw. He told her about the pressure of rushing into burning buildings, the memories of lives he couldn't save, and the quiet strength it took to face danger every day. Yet, he also shared the lighter moments, the camaraderie with his team, the joy of helping strangers, the pride in knowing his work mattered. Emily found herself drawn not just to his bravery, but to his humanity, the gentle heart behind the uniform. There was a trust building between them, an unspoken understanding that went beyond words. Sometimes they sat together in silence, her scribbling notes in her journal while he sipped his coffee, and yet even in that silence, the bond felt alive. The coffee shop became their safe haven, a place where time slowed down and the world outside seemed distant. Emily realized she no longer came there simply for caffeine or comfort. She came for him, for the warmth of his presence, for the way her worries seemed lighter when he was near. Winter crept into the city with biting winds and streets dusted in white, and with it came an unfamiliar emptiness for Emily. One evening, she walked into the coffee shop as she always did, expecting to see Jack at his usual corner table, his uniform jacket draped over the chair and his smile waiting to greet her. But the seat was empty. She brushed it off at first, telling herself he must have been called into work early, but the next day passed without him, and then the next. Each morning, the same scene repeated itself, Emily sitting with her coffee, staring at the door, waiting for him to walk in. The once comforting space now felt hollow, and the silence between sips grew heavier. Doubt began to creep into her thoughts. Had she imagined the connection? Was their bond just fleeting moments mistaken for something greater? She tried to focus on her writing, but the words felt forced, the pages empty reflections of her growing worry. Every sound of the door opening stirred her with hope, only to leave her disappointed when it wasn't him. She caught herself lingering longer than usual, as if her patience might summon him back. Even the barista, who had grown used to seeing them together, gave her sympathetic glances. Nights were worse when the city quieted down, and she replayed their conversations in her mind, clinging to the way he made her feel. The absence carved a space too noticeable to ignore, and though she told herself he had reasons, a part of her feared the worst. The season that should have been filled with warmth and new memories now felt like a test of her heart, leaving her uncertain whether fate had pulled them together only to tear them apart. Snow fell thick over the city the night Emily finally saw him again. She had grown accustomed to disappointment, to the sting of watching strangers walk through the cafe door while she waited for the one face that never appeared. That evening, she sat by the frosted window, her hands wrapped tightly around a warm cup, when the door creaked open and a gust of cold air swept in. She glanced up out of habit, and her heart nearly stopped. There he was, standing in the doorway, his uniform slightly worn, his eyes tired but carrying the same steady warmth she remembered. Jack stepped inside, brushing snow from his shoulders, and when their eyes met, the space between them seemed to collapse. Emily rose quickly, emotions colliding, relief, anger, joy, and disbelief all at once. He walked toward her, and though his smile was faint, it carried enough reassurance to ease every fear she had been holding. He explained quietly that he had been away on a long and dangerous rescue mission, one that demanded every ounce of his time and strength. He hadn't wanted to worry her, but circumstances had kept him from reaching out. Emily listened, her throat tight, realizing that every anxious night had been matched by his struggle to return safely. When she finally stepped closer, tears filled her eyes, and without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him. The cafe, with its dim lights and familiar hum, seemed to fade, leaving just the two of them standing in a moment that felt unshakable. For Emily, his return wasn't just about his presence. It was a reminder of what she already knew deep inside, that this bond was real, and no absence could weaken what they had found together months later. The coffee shop that once held chance encounters and quiet conversations became the backdrop for a new chapter in Emily's life. Her first book, a novel she had poured her heart into, had finally been published, and on the front page was a simple but powerful dedication for Jack, who taught me that the strongest hearts beat not just for themselves, but for others. She brought a copy to the cafe, placing it gently on the table between them, her nervous smile betraying how much the moment meant. Jack picked it up, his rough hands turning the pages slowly, his expression softening as he read the words she had written for him. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable, but even more than that, there was gratitude, the kind that went unspoken but was deeply felt. Emily reached for his hand, and he met her halfway, their fingers intertwining with an ease that spoke of comfort and certainty. Around them, the cafe buzzed with life, people rushing in and out, conversations blending into a warm background hum, yet for Emily and Jack, the world seemed still. the rain, the fear, the absence. All of it felt distant now, replaced by the simple truth of what they had built together. She had found not only a listener, not only a source of inspiration, but a partner whose presence gave her courage. He had found someone who saw beyond the uniform, who cherished not the hero the world admired, but the man who carried both strength and vulnerability. As they sat there, the same spark that ignited on their first meeting still alive, it was clear their story had only just begun, unfolding with every shared laugh, every gentle silence, every promise held in their joined hands.